Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's latest podcast. My name is Craig, and today is February 28th, 2014, on a Friday to be exact. And I want to be discussing one or two articles today. One is going to be from the Miami Herald, written by Charles Rabin, and it's entitled, Miami's Homeless Strip of Some Rights as Judge Accepts Settlement. Here we go. U.S. Judge Federico Moreno on Friday approved changes that will strip the homeless of some of the life-sustaining rights they were granted through a historic settlement reached in Miami almost 2 decades ago. Police will now be able to stop homeless people from building fires in parks to cook or from building makeshift tents to sleep in. The homeless can still sleep on sidewalks, but not if they block the path of pedestrians. If a homeless people are within a quarter mile of a public restroom, they can longer expose themselves to relieve themselves or to clean. And convicted sex offenders who are homeless will no longer receive the same life-sustaining benefits as other homeless people. Moreno's approval followed a vote in January by Miami commissioners to go along with the agreement worked out between the city and the American Civil Liberties Union. The city went to court last summer seeking changes to the 16-year-old Pottinger Agreement that was reached after a group of homeless men sued in federal court, claiming they were tired of being continually harassed and arrested by Miami police. The city argued the rules under Pottinger were antiquated because downtown's demographics have changed substantially over the past 2 decades. The population has doubled to more than 70,000 restaurants and cultural events are flourishing, and the remaining homeless are now constant bother to patrons and condo owners. The ACLU objected to the positions, saying despite the demographic shift, nothing has changed for the 500 or so chronically homeless that continue to call downtown Miami streets their home. Two sides reached agreement in December. Miami commissioners approved it in January, and Moreno accepted the settlement Friday. Yep. In the name of progress. I've been to downtown Miami, and I am not really that impressed, especially when you have these high-rise condos obstructing one of the great landmarks of Miami, which is called the Freedom Tower, which is along Biscayne Boulevard if you ever have a chance to check it out. And I have to say, too, the homeless are human beings as well. And I don't know what's going on down there, especially with the Camilla's House and a few other programs. However, if you stop harassing each other, don't get me wrong, there's some people that are in that entity or homeless, I say it's in good faith, have really harassed people that live in that area. And the other hand, a lot of them don't. I know many of them, too, have distorted issues, mentally disabled, which is a real shame. That needs to be fixed. And it's just really, like I said, very morose state of affairs. It is more like a compromise to me. And I like to say this to everyone out there, especially to the homeless. Every single one of us has a great gift. And if you gotta go camping, you may have to find other places. I know a lot of you folks in there can help yourselves too. It's just a real sad note when they want to treat homeless people like criminals, and that's one thing I say that's crossing the line. But this is overall a streaky report. However, hopefully one day they could what happened in Utah could happen in Florida, when the cities and the states, they had like foreclosed homes and they let the homeless people stay there. That would be a great concept. And if you start thinking like that, that would be nice. It has nothing to do with economics, but principle. So I will move on to the next article, which was written by Jeff Burrick on the same date. It's entitled "The Coming Eastern Bailout and What Tensions in Ukraine Mean for You." The geopolitical stakes in Ukraine have brought us to a quasi-Cold War redo, as the Western powers in the European Union and the United States have made it clear their intention to support, read metal in Ukraine. In the meantime, Russia has sent troops to the border of Ukraine in what are being called exercises. Turkey is experiencing protests and violence due to corruption by the government, and Venezuela is also experiencing protests and violence. The global political awakening has gone hot on multiple continents. Although 1 week ago mainstream press worldwide spoke about Ukraine as if it were in the midst of a popular uprising, a different picture has becoming clearer as communist and fascist sympathizers seem to poised to gain the most out of the chaos. Conspiracy aside, it is a no-brainer that major powers can have the most influence in these sorts of situations, and we are seeing this develop. Already, European-style bank policies are being implemented in the unstable region. 7% of deposits were drained from the Ukrainian banks last week amid bloody clashes between diverse protesters and the state. Now, in a bid to protect savings, Ukraine is mulling restricting cash withdrawals as reports of pending default loom. Well, that happened in Cyprus with the quote-unquote banking holiday. Same scenario with this one. Withdrawals peaked at 30 billion hryvnias, which is actually equivalent to $3.1 billion from February 18th through the 30th. What, the 30th? Okay, I have no comment on that. As police and anti-government demonstrators fought in the center of Kyiv, the interim government has told the world Ukraine is bankrupt and seeks $35 billion in financial aid. In other words, Ukraine is going to the highest bidder, and the European Union, the United States, and Russia will guarantee the funds. The EU won't be able to match Russia's standing offers, but an alliance between the United States and European Union could certainly bring Ukraine further under EU influence. On the year, the hryvnia is down 16%. The International Monetary Fund, which is also anchoring for IMF, is already ready to move in. Managing Director Christine Lagarde told Stanford University students in California, "We are ready to engage. We will probably shortly send more technical assistance support to the country because this is our duty to a member if that member asks," which is clearly what is likely to happen. Ukraine remains on the brink of default without significantly favorable changes in its political crisis, according to Standard & Poor's on February 21st. It cut the nation's credit ratings to a triple C, 8 levels short of investment grade. Ukraine picks its new government. Russia has apparently ordered tests of its combat readiness in the central and western parts of Russia. Protests in Ukraine ultimately led to the disposal of Russian-backed leader Viktor Yanukovych. Russia has pledged to protect the health and life of its compatriots. The Russian foreign minister has warned the United States and European Union to stay out of Ukrainian affairs, as media the world highlights U.S. and EU interference in the Ukraine, and their potential support are far-right neo-Nazi groups. It is dangerous and counterproductive to try to force upon the Ukraine a choice on the principle you either with us or against us, Lavarde told Moscow News Conference. I remember reading a quote from George W. Bush, and someone said Vladimir Lenin said the same thing. Pretty logical, right? Possibly in philosophy, I would say. Birds of the same feather always flock together, symbolically speaking. Moscow has already stopped a bailout package he reached with Yanukovych for refusing closer ties to Europe. The United States and the European Union have been quickly to pledge support. The U.S. taxpayer are in the dark about what's going on, so they won't get a chance to approve or disapprove. Plus, they are used to funding brooding totalitarian states the world over. In fact, it might be so that the hard-working people of Detroit, recently bankrupt, are chomping at a bit to send money to Russia's borders and invest in infrastructure, education, and science. Read Bribe Corrupt Politics. That's from the same site, personalliberty.com. On the ground in Ukraine, this will appear as a devaluation of the country's currency and privatization by EU and US interests of Ukrainian agricultural land. A push to bring Ukraine into a beleaguered EU will recommence, and Germans eventually will be the direct lifeline to Ukraine. As the second largest nation on the continent, Ukraine will be the tall order for the European nations to prop up. And with Russian troops amassing on the border, tensions akin to the Cold War have reared their ugly head. Talks have already swelled regarding Ukraine joining NATO, which would bring a U.S.-steered world organization to Russia's borders. What is likely, Western nations will now prepare to aid Ukraine. Some combination of Americans, Europeans, and Russians will pay for it. If Ukraine moves to closer to the European Union, this will result to a power shift in the EU, favoring nations like Poland and the Czech Republic. Partly for this reason, I'm currently en route to the Czech Republic, looking for into new opportunities during the turbulence. The event unfolding in Ukraine is now just go to show the importance of having the second passport when the SHTF, you figure it out. If you want to stay up to date on global economic change, read The Dollar Vigilante. The Dollar Vigilante is a good website, and what's really disturbing about going on in Ukraine, and a lot of people try to good rank and file, is trying to stand for what's right. But the question is this: who benefits, or Latin, Kio Bono? And what we're observing here is more like a Club of Rome agenda. All right, I would say Club of Rome, because they want to absorb, make all 10 regions or charters, all right, into one planet. Like, good example, European Union, and you try to have the North American Union and Japan and African Continental Union, just to give you those examples. It's very disturbing on what's happening a lot around the world, and we all know, I'm convinced in good faith, that the big banks like the World Bank, IMF, and those little central banks are responsible for this debacle, because it happened even with the Great Depression in 1929, and it was proven that there was enough information that the Federal Reserve was fully responsible for that mess. And so that's when I say, hey, we'll screw it up, but we'll be the saviors. It's like the same song and dance and scenario, and that's how I see things with what's going on in Ukraine and even other parts of Europe and Asia, etc. And I like to make this one note too, for sure, which is should be under foreign policy, if I'm correct. Foreign affairs. That's a good thing we can do here. And foreign affairs, America's policy towards other nations. This is what Thomas Jefferson says. We think that peaceful means may be devised of keeping nations into the path of justice towards us by making justice their interest and injuries to react on themselves. Our distance enables us to pursue a course which the crowded situation of Europe renders perhaps impracticable there. That was done in 1803. He had another one here. Let it be our endeavor to merit the character of just nation. So that's how I have to see this on what's really happening in the whole area.